Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is Michael Shea. I'm here with Lisa Kahn of Lisa Kahn Immigration. We haven't done a visa update, but I've had some requests. So Lisa, welcome back.
Thank you.
And some good news, I guess, since we now have I guess, a solution to the virus, right? That we're starting to see some movement. So you want to give us an update on immigration visas and everything? I know we're going to cover timeline, processing, can you file, how long, exceptions, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, sounds good. Today, I think is what, December 11th, 10th or 11th?
The 11th.
11th of 2020. So the reason I say that is everything changes all the time. So what's true today might be different in a month's time, and was different clearly 6 months ago as well. So everything I'll talk about is kind of what I'm seeing as of right now, but subject to change, I suppose, and that's part of something I think we've all gotten used to in a little bit of a nutty year, and with the changes with COVID, and as you said, vaccine coming, hopefully we're going to see some positive changes going forward as well. So with regard to e-visas, the treaty investor visas, it really depends in submitting those applications to the consulate on what's happening at the particular consulate and in the particular country. There are some consulates that really are not doing any e-visa work right now, not conducting any interviews, and pretty much shut down, except for really emergent visa type situations. Like Brazil, for example, there's nothing really happening there at the embassy. And so some countries are really a little different picture than others.
Okay.
A lot of the E2s that I deal with, and I think with you as well, Mike, come out of the UK, and thankfully London is still open. They're still accepting E2 applications. A new E2 application, from what we're seeing at the moment, takes about 90 days for the embassy to review. Once they've reviewed the application, then we can go kind of log into the system online to our account that we've created for the e-visa case, and select the next available appointment. Well, the next available appointment that's showing for London is August 2021. So that's a bit alarming when we're in December and a case has been reviewed and the client says, I can't get there for another 9 months.
Now, why is that?
I think what it is that because the situation with COVID is so fluid, and there was a period of time between end of March and roughly August this year when the embassy was not interviewing, and most of the embassies were not interviewing at all, with the thought that there is a chance that maybe certain embassies will have to go back into that sort of a lockdown where they can't do any interviews. I think what they're doing is they're not trying to schedule a whole bunch of interviews going forward and then find that there might be a 2 or 3 month period when they've got to wind everything down and cancel and kind of create a logistical nightmare. So I think what they're doing is they're saying, look, right now, pick a date for August 2021. But for e-visa cases, what they instruct us to do then is to email the e-visa unit, advise them that we've been requested to schedule an interview. We've selected the August date. We're asking for an expedite. Our client is prepared and ready to come sooner, and we'd like a date during these times. A client can come tomorrow. They're in the UK. They're ready to go. Or it's somebody who's maybe in the US flying back for renewal, and they can't come for another 6 weeks or so. A little tricky for people in the US that are going back to the UK, because when they go to the UK at the moment, they've got to quarantine for 14 days and then go to the embassy for an appointment. So for renewals, or somebody that may be here as a student or on another status and going back for an e-visa, they've got to build that 2-week quarantine into their time frame too. But what's happening then is once we email and we ask for the expedite, we're getting an expedited appointment at the moment. And I think too, a little bit of a slowdown with the holidays coming up, we're getting appointments for about the 3rd week of February. So the last 2 that we did within the last couple of weeks, where we said expedite, clients ready to come, they can come tomorrow anytime. They said, okay, February 23rd or 26th, around that time frame. So that's what we're seeing. But it sure beats August 2021. And we did have one client a couple days ago where we requested an expedite, and he got a January 4th or 5th date. But I think that was a bit of an outlier, and he probably was able to scoop up a cancellation.
Nobody, this is all done face to face still, right? They're not doing virtual interviews.
Not doing virtual interviews. I think a lot of folks have said, wouldn't it be nice if the embassy could do virtual interviews? It would be great, but I haven't heard any rumblings about that happening. So right now it's still face to face. They are doing less interviews than they used to, and they're definitely, social distancing. Everybody has to wear a mask, all of that. I think they're moving the interviews along a little more quickly. People aren't maybe waiting in the embassy and kind of lingering there as long, so it seems to be a little more efficient. I'm finding that on the U.S. end as well. When we have green card interviews, naturalization interviews at the local USCIS offices, they're moving those things along a lot more quickly. Just to, I think, to keep people, get them in and get them out, sort of a thing. So London is about as good as it gets, to be honest, right now for E2s, I think, as far as the processing time and their willingness to try to schedule the expedited appointments. When someone goes for the appointment and they get the e-visa, right now there's a travel ban for UK citizens to come to the US. So if they issue an E2 visa, but someone from the UK can't use the visa to get in, that would be rather silly. So there is a national interest exception or exemption from that travel ban, and they're pretty much blanket granting that to E2s. So when someone goes for their E2 interview and they've been approved and they're getting the visa, then another section will annotate the visa, that the national interest exemption, it'll say like NIE granted, usually for 30 days, and they'll often email that or give them a piece of paper when they when they pick up the passport with the visa in it that says you've been granted the exemption. But a 30-day exemption then means that if someone's got their e-visa good for 5 years, they can't wait 2 or 3 months to come to the US. They got to get on a plane and get over to the US for the closing and whatnot within that 30-day exemption period.
And then I heard there was still that path where you could go to like Serbia in the combat zone and then flip out because they don't have a 14-day, right? There are some countries that don't have any.
Yes. So let's say you've got somebody right now in the US with a valid E2 visa. They don't need to renew it. They don't need to file with the embassy, but they want to go visit family, or there's, maybe there's been a death in the family, someone's ill in the UK and they want to get on a plane and go. Then by virtue of going to the UK, they're triggering a travel ban to return. There's two options in that instance then. They either can go to another country like, say, Serbia or Anguilla or Croatia, where we don't have a ban, stay there for 2 weeks, fly directly to the US. Or for e-visa holders, when they're in the UK visiting family or maybe attending a funeral or whatever, the wedding or whatever the case may be, then they can email directly to the London embassy and request the national interest exemption. And there's a series of questions they ask about the nature of the business and activities, and then they're granting those in a few days. But you have to apply when you're in the UK. So somebody that's in the US that plans to travel can't get it in advance.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's somebody who is in the UK, for example, and wants to come to the US to meet with you and look at some businesses to buy, and they're coming in under the ESTA or under a B1, B2 visitor visa, they're not going to get the national interest exemption, and they would have to get over here by virtue of going elsewhere for 2 weeks and then coming in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Another thing too, I think it might be, I don't know if you see this too much with some folks, but for people that are already here in the US with an e-visa, but their I-94, their lawful stay is due to expire, and they need to travel out in order to come back in and kind of refresh and get a fresh 2-year entry.
Yeah.
Many of those folks don't want to go back to their home country or deal with the hassles of a 2-week quarantine and then getting the national interest exemption and then coming back just to kind of refresh their I-94. A lot of E2 folks are flying to Cancun, Mexico for 1 or 2 nights and then coming back and not really having any issues with that. They're allowing them to come back in and as essential kind of workers.
Okay.
So that's a good way to refresh an I-94 for somebody that needs to do that but has a valid visa.
Okay. So we've addressed how long, we've addressed the processing. We were going to talk about whether they file now or they don't file. There's some confusion on that front.
Yeah. So I think, sooner than later is generally a better policy. Get your application in and have it pending. Not all
the queue only gets bigger. So
I think so. The queue, for sure. They're always going to be a little bit more first in, first out. So it might get better as far as time frame. It might get back to normalcy, but there's, if there's people that are ahead of you, there's still going to be people that are ahead of you that they're going to address first.
Right. So you and I are addressing somebody in February who we've been dealing with for over a year, who's been stuck in this process. Then we had to reset it.
Right. I think, yeah.
So
not the norm, I think, that it takes that long.
Yeah. The point being that you got to get it in and get it into the queue.
Right.
I mean, we do have the vaccine. We do have a new regime. We can make some tea leaf assumptions that things will expedite and move quicker.
I hope so.
But we've still got to work through a backlog. So delaying, you're not going to win anything by delaying. It's like put it into the queue and then let you do what you get paid to do and work the system.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing that's interesting too, we talked mostly about London. Toronto is another embassy that I work with E2s, and in the past, they're super efficient. You file the application and maybe 3 weeks later, they reviewed it. You're making the appointment for another week later and really quite quick. Right now, maybe 2 month turnaround time from E2 submission to review completion, but they're scheduling into August 2021 as well. And when we requested an expedite on that recently, they said no. We have an E2 client doing an upstart business, a restaurant, and restaurant due to open in January. We submitted the application in September to Toronto. We heard back in November. We said, great, let's make the appointment, August 2021. We selected the date, emailed them and said, can we have an expedite and an opening a restaurant? And they said no. So that was surprising. So not all consulates are doing the same thing.
That's totally out of character for Canada.
I was surprised a little bit about it because I feel like, and I was talking to another client about it because he's also from Canada and wanting to do an E2 now. And I said, better to get in the queue. But I don't know if it's a little bit of, at the moment, maybe a little political overtures of a little bit, do we want to still have NAFTA or not? Because there was talk about that under the current administration that might alleviate with the Biden administration. Canada is taking COVID, I think, more seriously than maybe the U.S. has. They're
my daughter's roommate at college is from Canada, and she can't go back. So they're very restrictive in terms of the inbound and outbound travel.
Very restrictive there. So I don't know if I'm thinking there's pressure from the Canadian government and authorities on the U.S. Embassy that we don't want the brisk flow of people and goods and trade that we have enjoyed the economic benefits of, cross border because of the COVID situation. I think they're maybe weighing the importance of getting a handle on COVID in Canada, maybe higher priority than sort of the economic interest.
Yeah.
So that was surprising. With the client that I'm going to file for now, it's a different business than the restaurant, and he has a little bit of an angle where what they're doing here in manufacturing is a big job creation business and has perhaps a little healthcare aspect to it. So I said, let's get it filed, let's see what happens, and we'll ask for the expedite, and maybe we'll get the expedite based on the nature of your business versus the nature of a restaurant.
Right.
But remains to be seen. Which is why it's such a tricky time now, because it's hard to advise clients as to what's going to happen because we don't necessarily know day to day.
Yeah. I think the takeaway people need to understand is there is some political gamesmanship that goes on.
Sure.
I mean, we saw it back in pre-Trump. There was some stuff, and some perceived, some reality. I remember back, 16 years ago when we had problems in London with, she who shall not be named, who was there causing problems, just arbitrarily making things up. So, but people understand the rules are the rules, but sometimes some games start to happen and we have to
sometimes some personalities come into play, new visa chief, local, now I think with COVID, it's a lot of what are the local county, municipality, or per country restrictions that affect the ability of the embassy to operate the same level as before.
So like a summary of this is, you in particular are watching what's happening. You can't game it. We follow the letter of the law, and then we figure the workarounds, post, given the case and what the circumstances are. I have another case where someone's in Belgium, because I know I've asked you a couple times what's going on, and they're in like crazy shutdown. There's some poor guy living in a caravan there
Oh
for
gosh.
over a year, and some of that can be avoided, but otherwise, at the end of the day, he's still stuck and
Yeah.
predicated on what's going on in their country, nothing relationship wise with us. Okay, if you had to read the tea leaves, so we've got
Yeah.
viruses, we've got a vaccine, quote unquote, approved.
Right.
I'm thinking end of first quarter, the distribution starts to happen, new regimes in place here. Do we think that things will return to some semblance of normalcy as we get COVID under control?
I sure hope so. I certainly hope so. I feel like this time next year, I'd love to feel like this is a thing of the past and we're back to the way things used to be, but we'll see. I think there's two things in the coming year. One, a new administration that I believe will be more immigration friendly. So some of the bans I think we're going to see lifted, and visa bans that are in effect, because there's certain types of visas that aren't being issued at all right now at any consulate, employment-based and family-based. I feel like the new administration is going to probably lift those and we're going to see an opening. But I also think the new administration is probably going to be a little tougher with COVID restrictions that might, in the beginning, until everything kicks in with the vaccine and we feel like we're in a better spot, might keep us where we are at the moment for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, your comment on that is, hey, and this is where people get, it's not as whimsical as people believe it to be.
Right.
It's a law, but the new administration is going to want, hey, we're going to fix the problem. They're going to really try and fix the problem because they sold a story on fixing the problem. So
True.
They're not just going to open the doors if the science says restrict it. So everyone needs to wear their mask. Everyone needs to wash their hands, do your part, yada, 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 and we'll return to some semblance of normalcy.
Yeah, okay. I think so.
All right. So any other words of wisdom on the visa front? Plug yourself, give your website, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, sure. Well, my website is lisavisa.com, and you can email me at lisa@lisavisa.com. And I've been in practice for 23 years doing just immigration, primarily business and family immigration. And even though it's a challenging time, and it's always been challenging, it was challenging after 9/11, there's always hiccups, there's always bumps in the road, but it really is something that I love. I really enjoy doing it, and it's wonderful when you get such generally, good results for clients, and they're thrilled to be able to be here to pursue the American dream, or to obtain a green card, or become a citizen, or be reunited with family, to buy that business, to expand their business. So it's a good area to practice, and even though it's not an easy one.
Super. Well, thank you. I know you're trusted by everybody in my organization, because part of this video was done because those folks are going, what does Lisa say is going on? And I'm like, we'll call her and ask, or we'll do a video and get it out to them.
Yeah. You're my go-to. I always tell everyone, I say, if you're looking for a business to buy or to sell, you've got to go to Mike, because he's honest, he's ethical, he's a straight shooter, he's no BS, and that's what always you find.
One of your folks called me yesterday, and we'll talk about that when we shut this off in a second. So
okay, interesting.
Right. Have a good one.